Hi there. Um, that camera is built to my laptop, and it's been a piece of crap for a while now. I'm aware of it, dear viewer. You do not need to comment on it, as if I don't already know that. I have tried the usual tricks with wiping it down. It didn't work. I wanted to talk about Final Fantasy 11 again today, and you know, excuse me if I get into anything that's a little bit personal and unrelated to the game, but I quit. I returned last year because I quit like we're in the middle of like Wings of the Goddess, but I quit for completely different reasons than everybody else did, because a lot of people are kind of like, oh, there was some change in Abyssia, or there was some change in Wing of the Goddess that I didn't like, or, you know, on and on. And my reasons for quitting were more like emotional and personal, and had nothing to do with the game at the time. It was more like, oh, hey, I'm in a relationship where the person I met in this game, statics with me, got me all the way up to 75, was our red mage and everything. We were dating. We had been, discussing the possibility of my moving out there. Was my partner at the time. I was quite smitten with her. Things fell apart. Bunch of other players are into her at the same time. Said player doesn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and so is flirting with pretty much all of them all at once. Screw me for having somebody that was as desirable as Silver Rain happened to be. As a partner, it was mine back then, and I look back on it, and I decided to quit because it was like, this is the one thing that united us in the first place. And so why not, let go of the memories of everything, and because I can't play this game without thinking about you anymore. And that was the reality of it back then. And then like 10 years go by, and it's like, oh, hey, I got over it. I've got a partner that kind of has made me realize that that was kind of an obsession, and this is love, and more capable of telling the two emotions apart. And so it's like the game has become a lot more casual. In the meantime, the quality of life adjustments have made it so that I was basically capable of getting things done. And when I look back, and I suddenly emerge into a market where like World of Warcraft has released, a classic version, finally bending the players' demands, and in doing so encouraged everybody to go hassle Lessie to do the same thing. And it was kind of inevitable that it was going to happen. I mean, I think we all kind of saw it coming, but then it was like, why do people always view the past with this sort of like rose colored glasses on anyways? I mean, there was a lot of things that kind of sucked about 75 cap. And it got me because I was part of it. I mean, I was part of it so much so that I've been through the Juno Death March. I've been through the experience in Yodor Jungle back before a lot of the MPK patches went in, and the fact that there was a lot of unintended MPK going on in the old level grinding era. Like, you remember, like, if you were there for it, if you weren't, you're not going to remember this, but especially if you were there after things changed. But in that spot, like right after Quiffum, and when you went to level grind, you would go all the way. You would take the airship and go, to the outland area, the part of the Zilart expansion, place down there. I forget the name of the city, like I think Kazam, right? And then you would take the path and go from, you know, the first jungle to the second one, which was Yotor or something. I don't know how you pronounce these names. Anyways, but you would go into that jungle, and you would be like right there, right as you enter was the camp that people would be leveling at. And of course it was goblins, but they had this one move, bomb toss. and it was all parked along the zone, and you would have three or four parties doing it, and every now and then they would get so close to each other that they would be affected by each other's bomb tosses, which caused problems. But then every now and then some player would be on the far camp and, would have a problem where like they would over nuke or something and end up taking hate off the tank before the tank could actually, provoke something, or right after it had provoked something, so that it was not able to do, get the hate back, and they would come flying down the path towards the zone. And of course, as they were fleeing, the mob would get enough TP, and then it would bomb toss on top of everybody, and pretty soon between everybody's bomb tosses, you have a whole, zone of three or four parties that are dead, just all parked right on the entrance to the zone. And when I look back at, on history and the shit that we put up with and the things that they changed design wise through the game over time, it's like, oh my god, how did we put up with this shit? Like, why? What the fuck? And like, it's shit like that we went through and everything, and on our way to 75, especially as people that had been playing, like, before a lot of the shit that was wrong with it got patched in the first place. And before patches were released for all of it, and in early days, that only Japanese players and then a handful of North American players got that experience and saw that, because like I revealed, I started playing like 3 days after retail launched in North America. I built a PC to play with everybody else in the first place. And I look back on it and I'm like, there were things that I was not able to go over about it, like playing Black Mage primary and playing a Mage primary. It was like, oh, you're trapped in the city unless you have a party, because and if you go outside and start walking around at all, you're going to get ganked by some you know like monsters. Somebody's gonna end up ganking you, as far as playing was concerned. And so like, as far as wandering outside the cities and city centers, at least if you wandered outside, like Whitegate and everything, you were gonna get beat on by something and end up dead and having to zone back to town. There was no really going outside the cities without a party at all. So now that you've got the trust system, you can at least move about without getting hit on by something and just killed. And it's like, hey, now I can actually get things done on my own, and it's cool. But before, it was like, no, you can't. You can't do anything. You could do fucking anything by yourself in that game. It was like you can't even head outside the cities. You're just all trapped in it, waiting for a party to form up. And I look back on it, and then I look back on what was going on, and it's like Gil is impossible to find. There just never has been enough of it in this game. And oh god. So I look back on Final Fantasy 11 and its history, and I've been through a lot with the game. I mean, I've seen things that other people that came after never had to deal with and never actually witnessed. And I've been through a lot of it. I've seen a lot of it, and it's like, yeah, I do have the memories of everybody that was part of the old early era and early days for the whole thing. And so I look at it, and I look back on the history, and I'm like, I see all these people that are pushing for classic, and it's like, that's when I started making my videos about the whole thing, and why I decided to speak out, because it was like, there's a lot that you're not hearing, and there's a lot that is not going to be represented by the people that are obviously biased in one direction. That they're not going to tell you, because of the fact that they have that particular bias, as people that are you know when they have that preference. And one big thing that I would say, and big point against, you know, uh, the classic era that the 75 cap classic era that I hate, as much as I do, I would also just point out, I saw comments about how Abyssia supposedly broke the experience, but like I'm reading it and they're like, endgame link shells are broken, like I'm part of an endgame link shell, like all that it did was like shift the focus of endgame link shells, and they're like, unless you were a Dynamis Lord, and it's like, right, Dynamis D, Vagary, Omen, is arguably able to be done with the pickup group, but nobody in their right mind would do that, because it's a much better experience going through Omen with your actual link shell, because link shells tend to filter players that are like actually know what they're fucking doing in the first place, and tend to be when you there's something about the experience of playing with the same people regularly and doing on game events that tends to filter for players that know what they're fucking doing, or and also can teach you how to do your job better so that you're better able to carry your own weight in the party. But I look back on it and it's like we had link shell banks where you would sell where the link shell would take literally all the loot that was fished up and then go sell it. But the big problem with the whole link shell bank approach, and everybody cooperating by giving the dynamis currency to certain players, was just the fact that you had all that currency that was being filtered, that was circulating through the system. But the whole thing was that players that were the link shell banks had a habit of disappearing every 2 months by server hopping and taking all the fucking gil with them. It's like you kind of forget the pettiness and the drama that circulated around the link shells back in the day, and the shit that people pulled over on one another. And I mean, I was there for all of it. I saw all of it going on firsthand. And yeah, people would run away with the link shell banks all the fucking time. It's like, how do people conveniently forget all of this shit, especially the ones that were there for all of it? Like, like the infamy of all of it. And so, it's like I was not able to go over everything that was wrong with 75. There was a lot more to the story. Like, but I'm not here to tell you if you want to play Horizons, you can. I'm just like, I wouldn't encourage it. I would tell you to pay the troll fee and, come join us on retail. But, Horizons is always going to have one over on them, and that it's free.